It's time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors here on KC 101, brought to you by FCCB's Tioga County offices, which are located in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg. FCCB is a proud sponsor of Saturday with Seniors on KC 101. First Citizens Community Bank, building better communities for over 150 years. Member FDIC. And if you tuned in last week, we had Dorothy Kreger joining us, 91 years old. She was born in Canton, lived in Buttonwood, lived in Liberty, lived in Blossburg, and we had so much to talk about. I said, Dorothy, can you come join us next week? And hi, Dorothy.
Hi.
There's the answer. She's here. Join us here again. Now, if you missed last week's, you definitely got to hear it on our YouTube channel, and you can hear all the previous guests on there, too. Just go to youtube.com and then search in the search box, KC 101 Hometown Country. If you just put KC 101, you're going to, there's two of stations with the same name, do KC 101 Hometown Country. So we were talking about your kids and Blossburg and your shanty that you lived in Blossburg with no electricity, no running water. None of that stuff, held together by love. And tell me about, so your husband was working at the foundry, is that?
No, he was working for House Brothers Lumber.
House Brothers Lumber, okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same family that's Chaos and Son Lumber to this day? Pee Wee House?
Harold.
Harold House, yeah.
Yeah, he would be Bob's first cousin.
Yep. Well, Pee Wee, I think he goes by for thinking the same person.
Yeah.
He was almost a guest on the show, but I still haven't got it put together. So if anybody's listening, tell Pee Wee he should be a guest on the show.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the early days of logging. So tell me about what life was like then for you. You were living in Blossburg. What was Blossburg like when you were there? Early 50s we're talking about here?
No, 49, 50.
Okay, 49 to 50. Okay, I was close.
Yeah. I lived there at the time I was lost my twins.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear about you losing your twins.
Yeah.
And you had just got your driver's license.
Yeah, that I got after I graduated, though.
Yeah, okay. So I got my stories a little bit out of order, the way that they happened. But so you're in Blossburg, and your husband was working in the logging industry. And how far out of town were you in Blossburg? Did you go into town often?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a favorite restaurant you went to?
We didn't go to restaurants. We didn't have that much money.
I guess if you didn't have electricity or running water, then probably going to...
At the time we got married, my husband made $35 a week.
That was his salary, 30. So you had to really stretch that out.
Yeah, we did fine.
Yeah, raising kids and all that stuff.
I didn't have any kids at that time when I was out there.
Just living off the $35.
Yeah,
the two of you.
When the boys were born, we had bought a old place that was right beside his parents. They were on one hill and we were on another hill. It was a dip in the road, and we bought that and was fixing it up, as we could. And then the babies started driving.
Yeah. So which one was born first?
Steve.
And then Dr. Kreger just stopped by. Lenny, was he next in line?
He's next in line.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later was Mars.
So Dr. Kreger said, I need to ask you about some kind of story when you thought the kids had a sunburn or something, or what's this story about?
Len makes it worse than it sounds. But I drove into the driveway with all my kids, and just then one of them opened the door, and I yelled, "Close the door, get in the car." And then they said, "Well, what's wrong, Mom?" I said, "There must be a panther down there. I can hear it making noise." And it was a horse snorting.
But you thought there was a panther in the woods that was
thought they was gonna get my kids.
Yeah. Looking out for your babies. So did you end up taking a job at some point, or were the kids your full-time job all the way through?
Well, I worked at Fry Brothers Turkey Farm for a long time. I went to work there at 14 years old.
What was Fry Brothers Turkey Ranch like back there? Raising their own turkeys then, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. And my sister and I would end up, when they slaughtered, we were the two they chose to go help. But they had raised their own turkeys. They also raised pigs. I don't know when they butchered those. I never really knew, but I'd go over when they butchered the turkey. I had to get working papers.
Yeah.
In order to work there.
Turkey was not as common of a meal then as it is now. I understand that was sort of a unique thing to offer.
They also had a farm market like down at Williamsport, and they would slaughter them for there too.
What other types of jobs did you have? I heard you were a beautician. Was there anything in between that you did?
My daughter was in first grade when I just started beauty school. I've always did hair all my life. as a kid, you know. It was just something I did. One lady would come to my place from Canada to get her hair done, whatever she wanted. And then they'd go on to Florida for a while. And then when probably 6 months later, we'd do the vice versa. But I thought, I should get some money for this stuff. So I decided I was going to beauty school. And so I went. My grandmother-in-law came and stayed with the kids.
You go to beauty school.
I go to beauty school.
And did you end up eventually working in a beauty shop beside your house?
Oh, yeah. I always had my own. But I did work in a lot of nursing homes and stuff.
You traveled to people to help them out if they were unable to travel themselves?
Nursing homes mostly. They'd need me. Somebody had known me, wanted me to do their hair. And so that's how you would get the ones that wanted you. And, of course, you go in and do it for them. But I worked.
Do you remember what you charged for what services cost back then?
Oh, no, but I never charged any of the seniors on the nursing homes what they should. I think $7.50 for a wash and set.
Yeah.
And I didn't make that much money, but I did a lot of hair, so...
Talking with some of the older people that have worked in salons, I've heard that a lot of women would come in to have their hair set, that they wouldn't wash their hair or taking a bath was not something that many people did on a daily basis in the 50s.
I had a few that were known not to wash their hair, but, you know, with those people, they were nice people in the first place, but that hair would be luxurious. It wouldn't be like you would think, you know, it felt heavy like, but their hair, it wasn't falling out and thin and all that stuff like other people's hair.
I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but you lived in a lot of homes without running water and electricity. So how often did you take a bath? Do you remember when you were a kid? And how did you heat the water to do that?
Once a week. Well, a double boiler sitting on the kitchen stove, and then Mom would take 2 chairs and put the chairs together, and they got the tub ready, and we'd get the hot water out of there and enough to cool it down. And we went from the baby to the oldest. So I always took baths in water that 3 other kids had been in.
And it cooled down? Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, it never did cool down so much because you were in front of the kitchen stove.
Yeah.
It was warm.
Do you remember as a kid, I'm sure, a couple pairs of shoes, your good Sunday shoes, couple pairs of work shoes? Do you remember going to the cobbler ever when you needed your shoes fixed, or you fixed them yourself?
They did with the cobblers a little bit, but...
Cobbler's not just dessert, as people think this day. It's more than that.
Yeah. I don't recall how many, if we needed them or grew out of them, we had a pair to wear.
People didn't have huge amounts of clothing like they do now. If you're in the old houses, and you notice when you go in, there was usually no closets in the older houses in the Liberty area. There was just people who used wardrobes, I assume, because they had that little amount of stuff.
Yeah.
I think people in the 30s and 40s and 50s, if they knew the idea that we have storage units and walk-in closets, and we have 3-car garages that we can only fit 1 car in, that they would go, what is wrong with you?
Well, if my grandparents come back, they would think everybody in this country was rich.
Yeah, and they think, what are we all complaining about compared to what your parents went through the Great Depression? Do you remember them talking about that? And
I remember.
Things that, remember any stories your parents told you about how they got through the Great Depression?
I knew because the Depression started about when I was born. I think it was 30 and I was born in 31. And
I mean, bread bags were doubled up as keeping your feet dry in the winter, and your socks were mittens, and if your socks got holes, I'm sure they didn't just go right into the trash with 1 hole.
Well, I still don't throw bread wrappers away as much as I should. They could be used for other things.
And you remember rationing of gasoline in those days?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it was easier when you're on the farm or you're in the farm country, because this area is a little more self-sufficient than the city when it came to rationing.
Yeah, and the country, we knew how to pick dandelions and use them to eat.
For a salad,
Well, no.
Or to make wine.
Yeah, imagine I didn't do that.
Of course not.
But I love dandelion greens, and they're good for you, too.
Yeah.
But
little vinegar on them, and some balsamic. I'm with you.
Well, my grandmother was Pennsylvania Dutch, and so they did a bacon dressing and potato, eggs, vinegar, sugar, salt and pepper. And then when the greens were steamed down, and then they'd pour that over the
Sure. So how did you get your news when you were a kid? Do you
radio.
remember? So you would be tuning into Pittsburgh at nighttime or Williams?
I don't know the stations, but I can remember one time hearing Kate Smith. This is on the battery radio that Granddad had. She was singing, and she sang "God Bless America,"
Yes.
and I was horrified. I said to Grandma, she said God. I thought that was a swear word.
Do you remember your first time seeing TV? And it sounds like you didn't get a TV in your life till quite a while.
I saw my very first TV on my honeymoon.
Where'd you go on your honeymoon?
In Niagara Falls. I had a lot of relatives.
That was
there.
a popular place to go on a honeymoon then. There was no such thing as Disney World in Florida.
Well,
or
my aunt was down here at the time from home. And so she said to Bob and I we could have our place for our honeymoon, to stay. And that is about a block and a half right from the falls.
Yeah.
You walk out the back door of her place into Kresge's 5 and 10, the back door.
Yeah.
Walk out to the front door.
And there it was.
That's Falls Street. Walk down a block and a half, and you're there. And when I was that age, or younger even, there was a fence there, but it was all broken down. I mean, it wouldn't have saved a dog if...
Yeah. The world wasn't as padded then. You had to look out for yourself a little more than...
But I think of myself at the age I was, because I was just a kid that when I'd go up there. And I know that a lot of times I would be sleeping and jump at night. I was always falling over the falls.
Oh, geez. Nightmares of that, yeah.
It must be that was on my mind, the danger of it.
Yeah. So you went there on your honeymoon. Tell me about, where did you meet your husband? How long were you guys
together? We went to
together?
school together.
Like in high school you met him? And was it love at first sight?
No, I didn't like him very good.
You didn't like him very good.
No.
So you had to earn your love.
Yeah, I guess.
What didn't you like about him at first, and what made you fall in love with him?
I thought he was a smarty. Just thought he was a whole lot of something. He thought better of himself than he should have, and I didn't like that.
But eventually he won your love over.
I don't know how, but we got together anyway.
Yep. And then you got married and then went to Niagara Falls and then had all the kids. We're kind of talking, the story's been told out of order. You saw your first TV on your honeymoon. What year did you get married? I'm losing track of years. 1949. So TV was really, really, really new then.
Yeah.
There was a round, probably old Zenith.
I don't know. We went to visit my uncle one night, and he took us to this bar, and they had a TV, and I don't remember what it looked like now, but it was snowy like the new ones were, but first I ever saw one.
Yep. And you remember when TV signed off at night there, this ends the broadcast day. Boop. Test patterns on all night.
Yeah.
Did you see the Beatles when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Yeah.
So what were your first thoughts about the Beatles when you saw them? Did you go, wow, or did you go, what's the hype about? Where were you with that?
I don't know.
I'm sure everybody talked about it. It was...
I always liked music, so it was music, and I just thought there were a bunch of kids that
had weird haircuts.
Yeah.
We look at the haircuts now, and they don't look weird, but at the time...
Well, they were from England, so their hair styles probably were different at that time.
Sure. So what type of music did you like? You said you were into music all through.
I like all kinds of music, but my favorite is country.
Yeah. When you were a kid, even country music, did you see any country concerts in your younger years?
Oh, yeah.
Who were some of the people you saw in those days?
You wouldn't remember them because it was Jim and Jane out of Williamsport.
I don't.
Jim and Jane.
Yeah.
And
the McNett Country Band was Dean McNett. And
the McNett boys, they come over the Steam Valley Inn at the barn and hold dances and stuff there. At that time, Dean would play the piano. And in order for the piano, you had to have a couple catalogs to get him up high enough.
Booster chair of catalogs.
Yeah, and then
the Sears catalog was good for the outhouse and the chair for the piano.
But we knew all of the McNetts. After they got done there, then they come over to our house And then they'd sing, and my uncle would call, and they'd square dance and
Wow.
play all the time. And so,
Did you go to a lot of square dances and barn dances and stuff?
That was our entertainment, mostly that and movies.
And when you saw a movie, you say movies, we on Blossburg, are you talking about the old Victoria Theater?
Although we did go to Canton, too.
I don't know if it's called the Rialto then, but it is now.
Now what it was, but we did go back there, too.
They beautifully restored that theater if you haven't been over there since.
Yeah.
Do you remember a few of the first movies that you saw?
My mother and dad took me to see us to see, because I don't remember how many kids we had by then, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
You're the second person here that we had a person who walked like 5 miles to Wellsboro, each direction he walked to see at the Arcadia Theater first run.
Yeah, well, we went out and did that, and when the witch come on, the
Wicked Witch, yeah.
I screamed. I was scared to death. Mom had to come and get me. I was up front, where I could see better, I guess, and maybe they was trying to get rid of me.
Scared me as a kid too. That was then the Flying Monkeys. Those gave me the
didn't
willies.
Like that witch at all.
You remember any of the other movies you saw then? That time period there was Gone with the Wind. Did you see that? Yeah. Were there any local fairs or festivals that went on at that time period when you were a kid that you went to? The Great Mansfield Fair was going on. I didn't know if you traveled up there or to Blossburg at festivals then?
The Liberty had a fair. About everyone would have a fair, but they'd have a big fair and a parade. And up in the community hall, they would have their canned goods and stuff they put out that people did to get prizes and so on for it. A lot like Whitneyville.
Yes.
And down in the ball field, it had some games down there. This is when I was real little, but not like they do recently. But we'd have something to eat. We remember getting stuff to eat. And just everybody knew everyone, so you enjoyed visiting.
And did you ever take a train anywhere? I know the train was, I don't know if they were taking passengers back then, but when you were in Blossburg, but did you take the train to Corning ever, Elmira, or anywhere?
No.
But you remember the trains coming through?
There wasn't a train right there. There was trains like in Roaring Branch.
Yeah.
And
Blossburg did have a lot of rail service coming in for the foundry and passenger service. I don't remember when it stopped, but it was probably around 1950.
There was rail that went down through Morris.
Yeah.
Now I do remember hearing the whistle different nights. It'd be either down Blackwell or wherever you knew it was in a distance, but they still ran when we were first married. But they didn't have any loading people on down Morris at that time.
Sure. Did you ever meet anyone famous in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, when I worked at Fry's, my station, there was 2 men there. And I went out and was taking their order and stuff. And they told me what they wanted. And then anyway, he said, "Do you know me?" And I said, "No." Well, I'm Rocky Marciano, wasn't it? Marciano and Graciano always get me, the heavyweight champion of the world anyway. And I'm him.
Yep.
I said, so? Because I didn't know a thing about boxing. I didn't know that meant anything. And we had radio. We didn't have TV.
Yeah.
But anyway, he told me, and when I went in, and it was evidently his manager was with him. Anyway, when I went to give his order, I said, "There's a guy out here says he's the world's heavyweight champion." And he said, "Whereabouts?" And I told him right over the front of the fireplace.
Probably pretty obvious, not that scrawny guy over there.
Yeah, well, I didn't know any boxers. But anyway, the chef walked over and looked in. He says, "That's just who it is, too." So when I went back out, he didn't impress me because I don't know boxer. But when he left, he says, "We'll be back through on Sunday. Just don't let anyone know we're coming."
Yes.
Well, I didn't tell anyone, but I also didn't tell him that on Sundays on either end door, they stood in line and down the road waiting to get in the place, always.
It was that popular at Fry's Turkey Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
Why on Sunday? That was just a tradition after church?
That's the day people traveled more, I guess, and so on, but they'd come from everywhere. And so I didn't tell him that, I guess, because I didn't see him if he came.
He may have seen a line of people and thought,
I have the feeling that he looked and saw all those people said, she told him.
Yeah, and they're all coming in for an autograph.
So, but...
Anybody else famous that you've met? You probably met a few there, but they didn't tell you who they were.
Well, they would tell me, but I knew one lady was from Washington, and she owned a big, not apartment, but a big, I don't know what you call it, where people lived. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she told me I could come there anytime, free charge, if I wanted to.
Sure.
Well, I never did, but, she was probably very famous in her business, but
sure.
I didn't know who they were.
So you took care of cutting hair for a while, then where did your life take you from there? Or how recently were you doing hair? Or are you still cutting hair?
I had my place running in my home this time in Wellsboro until I was 84. But I didn't work full weeks. I worked like 2 days a week or something because I would get too tired.
Was that the last job that you had? Or did you do something after that?
Before that, I worked as business manager up at the clinic for 14 years, I think.
Well, all right. So TV, first time you saw it was on honeymoon. Then when did you finally get electricity and running water and a TV in your house? When did you become a modernized person?
It was pretty much by the time I went to third grade because Dad is like his father. He can make things happen.
Yeah.
And we had electricity and radio and...
Yeah. Do you remember some of your favorite early TV shows? Like I Love Lucy or Lawrence Welk Show? Or do you remember, was there shows that you look forward to each week when you got that first TV?
We had no choice, really, because that's about one station.
Okay, one TV, one station, and there was no remote control. That was you to... Well, there's no channel to change anyways. You were the volume control person, I guess.
Yeah, with an antenna up the ceiling.
Yeah. Was it Elmira TV that you picked up, that one channel, I'm guessing?
No, it was, I think, Binghamton, but I'm not sure about that, but I think...
But you could just about pick that up and catch what was on TV.
I have to tell you a story about
Please do.
Len here.
Okay, Dr. Kreger here. He's joined us partway through. I saw him poking through the window. All of a sudden he came in here.
He come home from school one day and he told me about his shirt hurt his neck so bad. And I said, your shirt? I said, well, let me see. I looked at, he had his long johns on, upside down, and his feet through the legs and the head through the trap door.
Okay.
And then he was complaining about his neck hurting.
So either his clothes were upside down or he was upside down.
I'm not sure, but one of them. Yeah, he had the whole thing on upside down.
He's going to be hearing
arm
about
was
this
through.
one now.
His arm was through the leg, and he had to have it on backwards.
Well, somebody had to teach him how to get dressed, and apparently you didn't do that job right as a mom.
It must have been my fault.
My goodness. Any more stories that you'd like to share? Any thoughts that come to mind? Or you've really lived quite an amazing life.
Yeah, I have. I've lived an interesting life. I've enjoyed it all.
Yeah.
There had been rocky places, but that's life.
Yep. Life's filled with challenges along the way, but you seem like you're doing wonderful. What's the secret to your youth? I mean, here you are, 91 years old. You drove yourself here to the studio for the interview. How do you stay so young? And you're sharp as a pin.
I never felt any different being one age or another. It was just a
number.
I never dwelt on, I'm old. Or, right now, I think sometimes, well, you're 91, but... I can't believe it either.
What do you do now for fun at 91 years old?
Oh, I just do a lot of holding chairs down, and they might get up otherwise. In other words, I'm sitting. I have a Facebook, and I have TV, and I have the dog and the cat, and then family. I like to go where the family is and watch to the little ones. They're so much fun.
Sure. Yeah. So you told me how many kids you have. I think you said 5 or 6, but how many?
4 kids.
4 kids. How many
or 3 kids, but 5 counting the twins.
Yeah, the twins that you lost early on. And then how many grandkids, and do you have some great grandkids? Do you know those numbers? Well, if you got to think about it, there must be quite a few.
Steve had 2, and Mars had 4. She lost her little boy. And Len had just had, he adopted Sundi. And I have, I don't know how many grandchildren, and 26 great-grandchildren the last time I counted.
Now, are you related to just about all the Kregers that there are in Morris and Liberty? That name is so common with the fire company and everything else, so that's all a branch of your tree.
Or if it's not real close, it'd be distant relative of the Kregers.
And what was your maiden name?
Alexander.
And there's a lot of Alexanders around, too, in Liberty area. Now, are you related to all them as well?
Yeah.
So you're probably related to hundreds of people in Tioga County.
Yeah.
Wow. You ever tried to draw out your whole family tree? Or has anybody in your family tried?
Yeah, I have, my second cousin does that, and my brother did, but he passed away, so all of that, they don't know how to get into his computer and stuff. It's all left the way it was, but he had everything.
Well, there are people that can get into those if you need to, professionals, if you want to see what's on there to preserve it. But that's neat. Yeah, I remember paying my taxes in Liberty to Sharon Alexander.
Yeah.
I still remember her middle initials K because I had to write it on every check when I had to pay my taxes.
Yeah, Sharon's grandfather would be my grandfather's brother.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I guess I'll ask you what I ask a lot of people at the end. If you had a choice to be raised today or raised in the year that you were raised,
well, back
you'd take that. Without the TV, without the electric, without the running water, without the polio vaccines, without any of that, you'd take it all.
I'd take it all.
Yep.
It's beautiful back then. Everything seems so innocent back then to what it is now.
Sometimes I wonder if we didn't have access to all the news and everything, maybe we wouldn't all be so...
And we would enjoy more. I've said I think I laughed my way through life because the funniest things would happen, and I always was laughing. You know, there's always doing something.
Yep, and when laughter's contagious, and humor is what heals better than anything in this world. When you were a kid, do you remember your mom having any tricks to help you feel better or remedies that we don't use anymore?
Oh, yeah. When we were sick, she always made me creamed beef on toast.
That was the cure-all remedy, creamed beef on toast?
For me, I didn't find that out till later, that my sister would say, well, she made me so-and-so. That was her favorite. And Jack, when I was sick, she'd make me this. So we all had our...
your chicken noodle soup kind of thing.
Whatever we liked real well was something she would give us when we were sick.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. This is Dorothy Kreger joining us, 91 years old. And if you missed the first part of the show, by the way, today's show or last week, because this is part 2, you do a search when you're on youtube.com for KC101 Hometown Country, and you will be able to listen to all the shows. We've had guests including Glenn Campbell, Shirley Bailey, Dorothy Bruce was on, Shirley Alexander was on. You probably know her.
Who?
Shirley Alexander?
Shirley Alexander. Now, there's another Alexander down country. I'd imagine that was her.
She was on. Dr. Bear was on. Phil Butler was on. Jim Paxson, Nancy Dunham, Millie Corwin, Betty Menji, Curtis Ofshlevsky, Bob Benedict, Gene Dowd, Marge Weatherby, Linda Steger, Susan Richer, John Eaton, John Bush, Eileen Robbins, Bud Schofield, Roger Chilson, Audie Scranton, Spud Button, Paul Bozzo, Grover Cleveland, Bill Hebe, Basil Short, Frank Youngworth, Helen Putnam, Bill McCauley, just to name some of the people who have been on Saturday with Seniors. If any of those names ring a bell, go to our YouTube channel and you'll find it fascinating. You probably know a couple of those names.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them.
Well, you should listen to them all online.
I'll have to have Len show me how.
He'll show you.
Yeah.
All right, this has been Saturday with Seniors here. A big thank you to our sponsor. It is FCCB's Tioga County offices in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, building better communities for over 150 years. Member FDIC, First Citizens Community Bank.